Thank you. Sir?
I'm just trying to phrase my question with like the MC, like you MC nearly every event held in Sioux City. So I'm just trying to figure it out.
What would you like to know about that?
So like, what would be the significance of you like emceeing these? Like, what experiences of like you?
How does that help me with running for this position? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
I think it helps you deal with the public. You'd be able to find out what people are thinking about, converse with them, get their thoughts in a way that might be helpful when you cast a vote. Ma'am,
You said you have never run for,
elected office.
exactly.
Correct.
How come you decided to do that?
Because I looked at the candidates that we have and I said we can do better.
Okay, and what better are you gonna do?
Well, I think that we need to have somebody who thinks about the entire district and not just one party that's in the district. I think we have two very partisan candidates, and I would hate to see that they just they win by one vote and then they don't think about the other party. I think we need to think about both parties.
Was there a reason why you started running this late?
I just saw that they weren't doing anything. They weren't making any kind of declarations about what they're looking for, what they want to do when they get in office. And I thought, why is this? Why do we have to wait until somebody gets elected and then we say, why did we elect that person when they really don't represent what my interests are?
What are your interests?
I want to see a more vibrant 4th district. I want us to see that it isn't so expensive for students to go to college. I think everybody should have the ability to get a higher education without paying tens of thousands of dollars a year just to go to school. And I think that we could have a very good system that would help feed the growing needs we have for educated workers in our community, so we don't lose a lot of really good people. So often people will come to college here and then quickly move. They don't stay in the area. And I think we need to have some kind of a system that encourages them to be here and then also helps our businesses so they get this good educated workforce. Too often it's a real strain on our businesses to find well-educated people who can do the kinds of things that we need to have them do. Sir?
How will you go forth with like making this system that with implementing everything?
I'm glad you brought that up because I have a school to work program that I hope to implement in the next year after I'm elected. The school to work program would involve local businesses. The local businesses would help pay for the students' tuition and fees so that then they would have, when they graduate, they don't have to worry about paying for all of these loans that they have. The business, because you would work for that business, would take care of that for you. And then you would promise to work for that business for a period of 3 years. Now there are some stipulations that would be involved with this. The first one is the students would have to have a B average. If you go below a B average, you are breaking your terms of the contract. The business would want you to be there for 3 years. If you did not work for them for 3 years after you graduate, you would be breaking the terms of your contract.
Do you suppose that having a B average and working a job is a little too much for some students?
I don't know that they would need to work a job because if I'm paying for your education, it should be quite easy for you not to, your job would be your education.
Okay.
Yes,
Going back
ma'am.
on the college part, do you think it's necessary for people to have a college degree and why?
I do. I think a lot of times people look at those who don't have a degree and automatically they discount them from leadership roles. That doesn't mean that they couldn't fill that leadership role, but that's kind of how we are built in our country these days, is that you think that somebody is probably better because they've had an education. Where I see an education as valuable is that it does give you a broader sense of what's going on. When I'm in college, I'm learning about things that probably I wasn't planning on learning. And so it helps me understand, if I am in business, what the rest of the world might be like. So I do think it is an advantage. And unfortunately, these days, you can just see that there's a cap on people. If they don't have higher education, suddenly they can't break through that ceiling to get more pay and a better job.
Would you, so if this program is implemented correctly, more people will have diplomas and degrees. Some people would say that more people with diplomas and degrees lessens the value of them. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that at all, because I think the more educated we are, the better we are, and it makes us better equipped to make informed decisions to help us fight off things like right now the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. Why aren't we dealing with more educated voices in this whole scenario? A lot of it sounds like it's just guesswork as the days go by. It isn't exactly this. If you do this, you will be safe. It's if you maybe do this, you could be safe. But there isn't anything that really protects us until they find a vaccine. Well, if we had more educated people who are working on trying to find a vaccine, maybe we'd find it sooner instead of, well, maybe next year, we're not sure. So I think that we do need to have people who are critical thinkers. And I think a lot of times people just shoot from the hip instead of really dig in and figure out what they need to know. Sir?
So are you saying the people that are working towards finding a vaccine right now are not that educated?
I think there aren't enough of them. I think we need more people who are digging into that and trying to figure out what's going on. Even around us, we have clinical research being done right here in Sioux City. There is a company, I wish I could give you the name of it. They are trying to find a vaccine that will work. And we could even be testers for them. They're looking for people who will volunteer to take the vaccine that they are creating, or a placebo, we don't know which. And I think if we had more options like that, I think we would find a solution much more quickly.
Would you be willing to put more money towards COVID-19 research?
I think we need to. I think we really need to, yes.
What
Sir?
about funding progressive studies for other future possible illnesses that can be avoided?
You know, there has been a time when we were always looking at these things, and then it became disadvantageous to do that kind of stuff. I don't know where in the world we started thinking that research was bad, but for some reason people don't like that. They think that that's not a good thing, and I don't know where this came up from. Maybe it's social media. Maybe social media was the reason why we have so many problems these days, is because people just throw anything out and they think, well, if it sticks, and it's good. If it doesn't stick, nobody's gonna say anything to me about it because they can't remember it.
And how would you go along with like continuing to have efficient funds for these programs?
I think we really do need to fund research into potential pandemics or viruses or whatever might be happening, because that's scary. That's a real scary prospect, is that we are going to have a world where anything can happen. And I think germ warfare will be a way of battling one another. And you know, we don't know that this isn't the case now, but certainly if an enemy wanted to somehow bring us down, you see how we've been crippled by this. It'd be very easy for you to introduce some kind of a virus into a system, and then what happens? Here we are. You probably could kill a lot of people. And interesting, we look at it now and we think a battle is with guns or nuclear weapons. Maybe it's germ warfare is the future of fighting enemies. So it is something we need to look into and figure out. Sir?
So you're saying that the United States should tighten up with their researches and finding a vaccine right now, because countries out there could start a germ warfare with us, and that could.
They could. You know, and I don't want to be the kind of alarmist who says, well, you know, they did it in China and they just brought it over to us. I don't think that's true. I was in China in November, and I saw none of that. I did not see American hatred. In fact, they loved us. And the idea that they're a big bad enemy, I think is wrong. I think this was one that just might have escaped, if you will, for lack of a better term. And it happened to get to us because we are a very mobile nation. But you can see the prospects in all of that, of what could happen. And so I think we need to be aware of that and just kind of prepare ourselves for what we could do in a different situation. Right now, there are entire industries that are just shut down because they have no way of continuing on. The entertainment industry, for example, they're not making movies, they're not making TV shows, they're not doing plays or concerts or anything like that because of people worried about going out in public. And so as a result, that becomes a real killer for certain kinds of industries. And I think, especially now when you've been in for how many months, 6 months at least, you think, I need some kind of release, I need some kind of entertainment, and we're gonna kill off that whole segment of our society, and we're gonna be an entertainment-less group of people. That's odd. But that's just even one little area. Then what this does to our medical industry, or medical healthcare world, is they're not able to look at other diseases and try and find a cure, a solution. Cancer has been around forever, but we're still not anywhere near saying it's over, it's done. But we're having to put our resources and our time in fighting the coronavirus. So that means we're like not looking at another area because of that. So it does really kind of sap up a whole bunch of stuff. And I think we need to look more closely at, how can we be better prepared if something like this happens again? Sir?
Do you, so you have talked about education, research for COVID, and other things. Do you feel like you're spreading yourself out too thin, or would you
Not at all.
prioritize one
And
thing?
because I think that, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg of the platforms that I'm interested in. But that is something, that's an example of things we should be doing. I think Congress, if you look at them, are a lot of just bickering people that don't want to even talk to the other side because they think somehow they're gonna lose something by doing that. And it used to be, if you go back in history, and that's the interesting thing, is that people don't study their history. They don't go back and look at what happened or where we are. They're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And so as a result, they don't realize that this doesn't work. It doesn't work to sit there and say, no, I'm digging my heels in, we're only doing it my way because we won. Or, no, you've got to do that because you're going to lose in the next election. It's crazy. They've got to work together. When a person is elected, they're not elected to represent just the people who got them the majority that they needed to win. They're representing the entire area that they are in. So that means people that didn't vote for you as well. And you need to do things that are in both interests. You can't just do things that are in the interest of one side, not the other. Sir?
So I know here on your I don't want to say resume, but
It's my news release.
on your news release here, you have a lot of interest in different organizations or a significant role. And if you were to receive this job, would you continue having these positions, or?
No, and all of these things are what I've done before I got here.
Okay.
So I don't know that they necessarily will hang on. I know that I couldn't keep my job at the newspaper. I know that I couldn't probably still keep teaching at Briarcliff. I know that I couldn't be on any boards or committees because I'd be too busy dealing with Congress. So more than likely, but they could come back, if I decided I'm not gonna run 2 years from now, so be it. Sir?
What makes you think that you're a cut above the rest? Do you think that you'd be able to make a difference between both parties, because they always bicker, they rarely agree on things, but do you think that you could be that person to start to make a change?
It takes one person to make a change, doesn't it? And I think I could be that person. I would like to see that I would be able to reach out to others, give them an opportunity to see that I'm willing to listen. I think that's our biggest loss, is that people aren't willing to listen anymore. They don't want to have an opposing viewpoint in their mind. And I think the more we do that, the better off we're gonna be. At the newspaper where I work now, every day I get people who call me with an opposing viewpoint of each other. I'll get one side calling and the other side calling, and they both think that I am with the other side. And so I know very well how people react to things, And until you sit and talk to them and explain to them, why did you do this? Why is this the way why did you run this story? That's a real big thing. And you say, because we are writing history as it happens. We are not writing history 2 weeks from now. We're writing what we learned yesterday. And today is gonna change whatever we did yesterday, and you might see another story about that. And I think people don't look at it in big picture terms. Every day is a different day and something else is gonna happen. They want it now. They want the answer today. They don't want the answer tomorrow. They're very anxious and they're also very impatient. And you look at things like the election. The election is just, one little bombshell thrown out there suddenly becomes the heat of the news. And the side that it's not favorable to says right away, wait a minute, you're not being fair to my candidate. And you go, no, we're fair to your candidate. It's just that today he's having a bad day. Tomorrow, it could be the other candidate, and I'm gonna hear that from the other side. But we're not patient enough. Social media has made us very unwilling to wait to hear for anything. So I think that's where the problem is, that people aren't willing to sit down, aren't willing to talk, aren't willing to hear what others have to say. And I think they used to do it. You used to be able to say, my congressman is, and they couldn't think of the party they were related to because that congressman represented them, not just one party. Today we've become a very one-party kind of concept with the House of Representatives.
So,
Yeah.
you talked earlier about the school program that you want,
Yes, the school to work.
yes. Would you say that's your biggest new thing that you're gonna find?
Well, certainly people have not tried this before.
Yeah.
And I think it bears looking into, because have you seen the price of education these days? It's ridiculous. When I went to school, when I was sitting in where you are, it was $300 for a semester. That included room and board and my credits. $300. What is it now? It is not $300. You see how did that happen in that period of time, that it was so inflated? What went wrong there? And it isn't because I'm making a lot of money as a teacher. My salary here is the same salary I got when I started 37 years ago. They have not given me a raise in that period of time. So the idea that the teachers are suddenly asking for more money, that isn't it. It's other costs that are coming into play. But I think the ones who are bearing the brunt of it are the students, because they're getting out of colleges and they may have $100,000 in debt that they've got to try and pay back with a job that probably isn't going to pay them that much over a period of time. You might not get out of that debt for decades. And then you're starting to look at retirement. You think, did I save any money for retirement? No, I did not. Because I was trying to pay off those student loans that were way too expensive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you say that is your biggest question?
Platform, perhaps. It's one of those things that I have a vested interest in. I'm interested in it. I know that I can bring the business community together with the educational community, and I think there could be some synergy there that would really be good for both of them. Businesses always are looking for more workers, better workers. And they say, well, how can we attract anybody here? Well, you've got people here. You just need to keep them. And how do you keep them? By paying them well and giving them a job that's rewarding, that they care about. Ma'am?
So do you think that's your program there is a little bit just restricting in the fact that college students sometimes will go to college to figure out what they want? So when they go to college under your program, knowing that they're gonna be a business degree and decide that they wanna do something else.
It's gonna cover a whole variety of areas. It won't just be business. What would you be interested in becoming?
Designer.
A designer, okay. So a graphic designer, are you talking? There are many companies that are looking for graphic designers. There are people who are looking for social media experts. There are people looking for fashion commentators in our community. Well, if I can pair those together and help them out, I will find you a company that will want somebody who can design things. So if you're gonna be a graphic designer for them, then here you've gotten experience in a job that is gonna work for you. and you have 3 years that you know you're gonna have a job. You could then be continued on after 3 years, or maybe you wanna move somewhere else, but you've got that 3 years in here in our area. And we have the benefit of your expertise, your skill, your intelligence. Sir?
How much would these companies be paying of the tuition of students?
All of it.
Don't you think that's a little too much? Well, would anyone want
No.
to do that?
Sure. Because if you talk about how much they spend on recruiting fees and what they need to do to get somebody in, it's remarkable. You may spend $50,000 trying to attract a top-level executive. Well, why not spend the money on an education, right?
Isn't there no guarantee that the person that they're getting is top quality?
Well, that's why we have the B average. That's how I can make sure you're paying attention and you're doing what you need to do at school. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay. Other questions? Sir, welcome. You did not get one of my news releases I'd like to share with you. I'm running a write-in campaign for Congress. And I know you'll want to get this done today because, of course, the release will have to get out after your class period. So I want to make sure that you all get all the questions you need answered before we move on from here. More questions? Probably have time for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes.
Are there any other platforms that you want to prioritize?
Agriculture. Agriculture drives our district. I'd like to see more work done to help our farmers. When you look at the kinds of things that have happened in the last 4 years, it has not been Iowa farmer friendly. When the governor, or the president rather, talks about we need to revitalize coal, and we're trying to do wind energy in our state, I find that almost a slap in the face. And I think we need to have alternative methods of fuel, particularly when we've been able to prove that if we had wind energy, we could reduce the cost that it travels on to the consumer by using wind energy. There are places where they are wholly sustainable through wind energy. And what does it cost us? Nothing. Nothing. And so I think we've got to look at that. I think the farmer has gotten a poor shake on deals. The administration will cut down any kind of deals that we have with other countries and saying, well, no, we're mad at those people, so we're not going to make a deal with them. And that cuts we saw it in our pork industry this last year. The pork industry was crippled because they couldn't sell some of their hogs overseas. And so as a result, they just euthanized it. They didn't even use them for food for somebody who could use it. So I think agriculture, I would love to be on the agriculture committee just to be able to promote that cause for our residents. Yes, ma'am.
How would you go about promoting that? Like, how would you start bringing awareness that, Iowa farmers are getting like the short?
I would not just vote for whatever. I would make sure that my voice was heard and I talked about the situation in our state, in our district, and I would point out that they need to have better prices so that then this whole trickle-down theory of how everything operates doesn't get hindered. If farmers have bad prices, it doesn't just affect the farmer. It affects everybody else who is in that area because businesses then don't get that kind of money flowing through. As a result, then maybe our prices are higher for other things. I'm not getting a raise because we're not selling enough papers. So it becomes a very difficult kind of domino effect. And I think if our farmers, which is the backbone of our district, had good prices for their crops, for their livestock, for whatever it is that they are raising, it's going to help the whole region. We're going to all be benefiting from this. And when we have a bad year, we had the farm crisis, you could see how it crippled our whole economy. And I don't want to see that happen again. Farmers feed the world. And it's about time that we give them the prices they deserve. Sir?
And what will you do to promote better qualities for the farmers, especially with situations where it's out of the control of our hands, with, say, the wind, say, the weather?
They certainly have, well, there are ways to deal with bad weather, and if they have, insurance, crop insurance is a way of protecting them. But sometimes farmers go without crop insurance, just hoping that it's gonna be a good year and they don't get wiped out. But that is certainly a protection for them to make sure that, you know, they're not gonna have zero on their ledger when the year is done. So there are ways of educating them as well. You know, we think that farmers are kind of independent and able to do whatever they want on their own, but you notice that they need to have more information, more education to even discover what kind of things they could do. What are things that are advantageous to them? Maybe there are new crops they need to try, so that then it might be a higher income rate for them. So you never know, but they need to have help too in other areas other than just a good price. Any more questions? Any more questions? If not, I thank you for your time, and now you have until, I believe, 10 o'clock, so you can get your story done. So, thank you so much. Okay, now what you need to do